You can feel it in your gut, can't you? That subtle shift in the air, a new distance you can't quite put your finger on. You've asked what's wrong, but the answers you get feel hollow. Maybe a little too rehearsed or just plain incomplete. What if the real story isn't in her words, but in the unconscious signals he can't control? What if her own mind, trying so hard to hide something, is accidentally leaking the truth? If you're grappling with an intuition that's screaming something is wrong, while your logical brain is scrambling for proof, you're not alone. That tug-of-war between feeling and fact is maddening. Today, we're closing that gap. We're not talking about clumsy, obvious lies. We're getting into the subtle, psychologically driven behaviors that pop up when someone is wrestling with the truth. These aren't foolproof signs of guilt, let's be clear about that. But they are strong indicators that something is being hidden. By the end of this, you won't just have a checklist of red flags, you'll have a new lens to understand the unspoken language in your relationship, helping you trust that nagging feeling and find the clarity you deserve. Sign number 1. Her stories suffer from narrative drift. First up is a sign grounded in solid psychology, something I call narrative drift. This is when the details of a story she tells you change over time. It's not usually one giant, glaring contradiction, but a series of small, weird shifts in the details. For instance, maybe one day she says she was late because of a huge traffic jam on the highway. A week later, the topic comes up, and now the delay was because she saw a fender bender on a side street. On their own, neither story is a big deal. But the fact that they don't match up, that's the real data point. Here's the psychology of why this happens. Our brains are amazing at storing real memories. They're encoded with sights, sounds, emotions, a whole rich, layered file. When you recall a real memory, you're just opening that file. It's effortless. Lying, on the other hand, is hard work. Psychologists call the mental effort it requires cognitive load. When someone makes up a story, their brain has to work overtime. It has to suppress the truth, invent a believable alternative, and then perform that story convincingly. The hardest part is keeping that fake story straight over time. The brain just doesn't store lies with the same rich detail as real memories. Lies are thin, flimsy scripts. So when she's asked to recall the lie later, especially out of the blue, she isn't pulling from a deep well of memory, she's trying to remember the script. And a lot of the time, she can't. Details get jumbled. Timelines wobble. Let's say you ask about a weekend trip she took with friends a few weeks back. The first time, she tells you a funny story about a clumsy waiter at a specific restaurant they went to. Weeks later, you see an ad for that restaurant and say, "Hey, that's the place you went with Sarah and Jen, where the waiter spilled the drinks." If she hesitates, looks confused for a second, and says, "Oh no, we didn't go there, we just ordered pizza at the hotel," that's narrative drift. Her brain, not under immediate pressure, couldn't access the fake clumsy waiter file and just gave a simpler story. These little slips in continuity expose the huge mental effort it takes to maintain a lie. The truth is stable. Lies are fluid. Sign number 2. She builds a fortress of defensiveness. Have you ever asked a simple, harmless question and gotten a tidal wave of anger in response? That's our second sign, building a fortress of defensiveness. It's when a calm question is treated like a courtroom cross-examination, and you suddenly feel like you're on trial for just being curious. Picture this, you ask something totally normal, like, "Hey, I tried calling earlier, where were you?" An honest, secure answer is simple. "Oh sorry, my phone was on silent for a meeting," or "I was at the gym and left it in my locker." But instead, you get a reaction that's dialed up to 11. "Why are you always checking on me? Can't I have 5 minutes to myself? I feel like you don't trust me." See what happened? The conversation just pivoted. It's no longer about where she was, it's about your so-called trust issues. It's a classic psychological judo move called deflection. The goal is to avoid and control. A direct question feels like a threat because it gets dangerously close to the truth she's hiding. Her brain panics and creates a diversion. Anger is a fantastic tool for this. It creates emotional chaos, puts you on the defensive, and makes you the one who has to apologize. The fortress walls go up, the original question is left outside, and the secret stays safe. Another version of this is the counter-accusation. You might gently point out a tiny inconsistency in her story, and she'll fire back with, "So I'm a liar now? What about that time last year when you..." This is a subconscious strategy to shift the moral high ground. By attacking your credibility, she tries to invalidate your question. It's a smokescreen meant to make you feel guilty and drop it. The key here is how disproportionate the reaction is. People in healthy, honest relationships can answer questions without feeling attacked. If your gentle curiosity is consistently met with cannon fire, it's a powerful signal that you're getting too close to a truth she's not ready to share. She's not just answering a question, she's defending a secret. Sign number 3. Her phone becomes a vault. Our phones are basically extensions of ourselves. There are photo albums, our diaries, and our direct line to the world. So, how a person treats their phone can tell you a lot. The third unconscious sign is when her phone suddenly goes from being a casual device to a high-security vault. This isn't about a general need for privacy that's healthy. We're talking about a sudden, dramatic shift in behavior. Think about how things used to be. Did she used to leave her phone on the coffee table? Did she ever ask you to read her a text while she was driving? The red flag goes up when that old pattern changes drastically for no apparent reason. Suddenly, the phone is her permanent sidekick. It goes to the bathroom with her. It's always placed face down on the table. She might instinctively angle the screen away when a notification pops up. Maybe you notice her clearing her call history or deleting message threads, something she never cared about before. Or she changes her passcode, and when you ask for it to queue up a song, she gets cagey. Psychologically, this is all about controlling the evidence. When someone is doing something they know would cause a major problem, an emotional affair, a financial secret, whatever it is, their phone often holds the digital proof. The new secretive behaviors are her anxiety leaking out. Guarding the phone is a direct, physical act of guarding the secret itself. Imagine you're on the couch and her phone buzzes. In the past, she'd glance at it and move on. Now, you see a flash of panic in her eyes as she snatches it up before you can see the screen. She might force a laugh and say, "UGH, spam again." But that split-second panic was the truth. It was an unconscious leak of her anxiety. Her body reacted to the threat of being exposed before her brain could cook up a casual lie. This sign is especially strong because it's usually a whole cluster of new habits. The phone is suddenly always on silent. She takes calls in another room. She's texting more but is super vague about who she's talking to. These are the physical rituals of secrecy. Her phone has become the box that holds the lie, and her unconscious mind is forcing her to protect that box at all costs. We're at the halfway point, and if any of this is hitting home, I know it can stir up some tough feelings. It's painful to feel like you can't trust the person you're closest to. I'm curious, have you ever experienced that sudden phone vault behavior? Let me know in the comments. You're definitely not the only one, and sharing your story can make others feel less alone. While you're there, if you're getting value from this, make sure you're subscribed with notifications on, because the next 3 signs are even more subtle, and you'll want them in your toolkit. Sign number 4. The clustering of nervous body language. Sign number 4 is often misunderstood. Nervous body language. Pop culture tells us that liars can't make eye contact, but research shows it's way more complicated than that. In fact, a practiced liar might overcompensate with intense eye contact to seem more believable. A more reliable indicator is a cluster of nervous signals that pop up together, especially when you're talking about something sensitive. When a person is trying to keep the truth down, their internal stress often leaks out through their body, which is much harder to control than their words. So what does this cluster look like? Imagine you ask her about a weird charge on the credit card statement. As she explains, you notice a few things. She might create a physical barrier, like grabbing a pillow and hugging it to her chest, or crossing her arms tightly. It's a subconscious way of putting up a shield. Next, look for self-soothing gestures. These are repetitive, unconscious things we do to manage anxiety, like rubbing the back of her neck, touching her face, or fiddling with her watch. While her words are spinning a plausible tale, her hands might be telling a completely different story, one of stress and discomfort. And then, check her feet. We rarely think about controlling our feet. If you notice that while she's facing you and talking, her feet are pointed toward the door, that can be a huge unconscious tell. It's sometimes called exit-oriented posture, signaling a deep desire to get the heck out of that conversation. When you put it all together, it's a powerful picture. She's giving you a perfectly reasonable explanation, but she's also breaking eye contact at key moments, clutching a pillow, twisting her ring, and her feet are aimed at the door. No single action is a smoking gun. But the fact that they're all happening together creates a cluster of nonverbal signals that are disagreeing with her words. Her mouth might be saying, "Everything's fine," but her body is practically screaming, "I'm uncomfortable and I want out." Trust that silent scream. It's usually more honest. Sign number 5. An epidemic of vague dishonesty is specific. Deception is vague. The 5th sign is when a fog of vagueness suddenly rolls in and infects her communication, especially about her time, her plans, and where she's been. When someone has nothing to hide, details come easily. When they're hiding something, details are a liability. Think about a normal conversation. You ask, "How was your day?" And you get a specific answer. "Pretty good, that meeting with the Johnson account went forever, but I finally tried that new sandwich place downtown." The story has people, places, and specifics. Now, the flip side. You ask the same question, and the answer is fine or busy. You ask who she went out with, and she says, "Just friends." Where did you go? "Oh, just out." This shift to vague, non-committal language is a defense strategy. Every specific detail a liar gives is a potential fact that can be checked. It's a thread that, if pulled, could unravel everything. To minimize that risk, the subconscious defaults to the bare minimum. It's much easier to defend "I was out with friends" than a detailed story about being at a specific bar with specific people at a specific time. Maybe she tells you she's having a girls' night. You casually ask, "Oh fun, who's all going?" And she hesitates before listing a few names, but it sounds uncertain. You ask where they're planning to go, and she says, "Not sure, we'll probably just figure it out later." This pattern of vagueness, especially if she used to be an open book, is a big deal. This is often paired with shutting down follow-up questions. If you gently probe for more, you might get a flash of impatience or defensiveness. If you say, "Well, have fun, text me where you end up," and her reply is a clipped, "Yeah, we'll see, don't worry about it," she is actively denying you access to the specifics. An honest person's life has texture and detail. A life that has a secret often has large, blurry, out-of-focus patches. If you're getting fuzzy answers to clear questions, it's a strong sign she's hiding the details because she doesn't want you to see what's really in the picture. Sign number 6. The unsettling affection swing. This final sign is often the most confusing and emotionally jarring. A sudden, extreme swing in affection. This can go one of two ways. Either she becomes cold and distant, or she becomes almost suffocatingly affectionate. Both extremes spring from the same place, the internal conflict and guilt that comes with being dishonest. First, let's look at the swing toward distance. This is when she just checks out emotionally. Intimacy, both physical and emotional, dries up. Deep conversations become shallow and brief. She might seem constantly distracted and less interested in your day or your shared life. This emotional retreat is often a subconscious way to create distance from the lie itself. It's hard to be deeply connected to someone you're deceiving. The guilt is exhausting. So, her mind builds a wall. It feels like she's a million miles away, even when she's right next to you, because a huge chunk of her emotional energy is being spent on guarding her secret. But the other side of the swing can be even more confusing. A sudden flood of over-the-top affection. This is sometimes called guilt-driven affection. Out of nowhere, she might start showering you with compliments, buying you random gifts, or initiating intimacy way more than usual. On the surface, it feels nice, but it can also feel off. Performative. It doesn't feel earned, and it often comes right after a period of sketchy behavior. This overcompensation is her mind's attempt to balance the scales. The subconscious logic is, if I do all these good, loving things, then I can't be a bad person. I can cancel out the bad thing I'm hiding with all this good. It's a smokescreen, an attempt to reassure both you and herself that the relationship isn't just fine, it's fantastic. For example, if she was mysteriously out of touch for hours and then comes home and is suddenly incredibly passionate, that swing is a major piece of data. Whether she becomes a distant ghost or an overly affectionate stranger, the key is the sudden, unexplained shift from her normal behavior. A stable, honest relationship has a pretty consistent emotional climate. When you start getting these wild swings between hot and cold, it's often a symptom of a deep internal battle. She's fighting a battle very likely rooted in dishonesty. So, let's recap the 6 signs. Narrative drift, where stories change. The fortress of defensiveness, where questions are met with anger. Her phone becoming a vault. The cluster of nervous body language. The epidemic of vagueness. And finally, the unsettling affection swing. Now, it is so important to remember this. None of these signs on their own are absolute proof. People get defensive, people forget details, and everyone has bad days. But your gut instinct is usually picking up on a pattern, a cluster of these things happening together. That's where the real insight is. This isn't about turning into a detective and interrogating your partner. It's about honoring your own feelings and recognizing that your unease is probably pointing to something real. The goal here isn't to catch her in a lie. The goal is to get back to a place of peace and truth. Think of these signs as a roadmap guiding you toward the conversation that needs to happen. They empower you to go from feeling confused and anxious to feeling informed and clear. Trust that gut feeling. It's often your unconscious mind recognizing these very signals long before your conscious brain can put a name to them. If this video helped you find some clarity, hitting that like button is a huge help and allows the video to reach more people who might be stuck in the same confusing spot. For more deep dives into relationship psychology and human behavior, make sure you subscribe and turn on those notifications. Most importantly, I want to build a real community here. Share your experience in the comments. Have you seen these signs before? How did it play out? Your story might be the one that gives someone else the courage to seek their own truth. Thanks for watching, and remember to trust your intuition.